You don't have to like them to delight them. You are going to deal with difficult people that you do not know where they just came from. You don't know where they're going. You don't know why they're being difficult. Them being difficult will identify what they're willing to be. It doesn't identify what you're willing to be.
Welcome back to another episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. My name is Chris Kiefer, and today I am joined by Louie Gravance. Louie has spent over 25 years at Walt Disney World, where he helped design Disney's approach to quality service, which is a curriculum at the Disney Institute. It's basically the gold standard for customer service training. He won both the Disney Partner in Excellence Award and the Spirit of Disney Award. And after leaving Disney, he designed Bank of America's most successful customer service training program in the company's history and was a part of the launch team for Diagon Alley expansion at Universal Studios. He's also the author of Service is a Superpower, Lessons Learned in Magic Kingdom. And his core message is one that I think every business owner needs to hear, and that is that great service doesn't just transform customer experience, it transforms the person delivering it. I heard Louie was fortunate enough to be in the audience listening to a keynote of his at the PCA Expo just a few weeks ago. And I was super, super excited to get the chance to come on and talk to him today in more detail. So, Louie, thanks so much for taking the time to share your wisdom and passion for this topic of service.
Well, Chris, thanks for having me, and thanks for that glorious introduction. And I think that if somebody heard that introduction, they would probably think I was schooled. And I just think that it's, just for context, I think it's important to note that while I spent 25 years with the Walt Disney Company, I didn't start somewhere like the Disney Institute. My first job at Disney was I was a singing mortician outside the Haunted Mansion for a summer job in 1987. That was my, so there was nothing that would have portended my working for training and development or playing a role in it at the Walt Disney World Resort. So that should be encouraging to other people that are following non-traditional paths.
I've often wondered, to me, even being a singing mortician, maybe back then it was easier. Today it seems like that could be something that someone is striving for in high school or college. Like, that's what I want to do, as like, they don't, not for their life, but like that's a target that seems like still an impressive like thing that you didn't just fall into. Was there can you give the quick backstory on like, how did you even get the first job?
Well, I had been in show business since I was 13 years old. And I had played teenagers on TV for years and years. And then I always say I was a child actor until I got too hairy to be one. And suddenly, I was a 5'2.5" guy that didn't look 16 anymore, and I needed gigs. And plus I'd always been a Disnoid. In kindergarten, I got up and said, one day I'm going to work for Walt Disney. And I've been told now from people that I went to school with, you're the only kid that did exactly what they said they were going to do in kindergarten. So yeah, but I also think the arc from singing mortician to being a part of Disney's approach to quality service deals with my core message, which is that an investment of yourself is an investment in yourself. And in lots of great organizations, and I met them at your event, you'll meet people that followed a path of excellence. Just whatever was in front of them, they tried to bring excellence. And just like one frame of a movie, you look 24 frames a second and step back, and you see a real narrative that is propelled by self-investment. And like you were saying, what I learned was that service wasn't just performative, which it is. Customer service or the customer experience is a performative endeavor. It's also transformative, and transformative for the people that are willing to engage. Yeah, exactly. Willing to self-invest.
On both sides.
Yes.
I completely agree. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why your message resonated with me, because what I'm doing today, which you were asking about before, is I automate painting businesses. And people are like, what? And I'm also like, look, I don't know how I ended up here either. I played with Legos and Connects when I was a kid. Like, I was an engineer by education. I got an engineering degree, but I just in everything that I've done, and I feel like this was partially probably instilled by my parents, just by their example. It's not like they told me this, but it's so hard for me to show up from like the very first internship that I had to not just like crush it. Like I was just like, I want people to say like, wow, you're doing a great job, Chris. It's like, I'm just pursuing that like pat on the back. And I feel like I did that in multiple different jobs, and it was through just excelling. And I want, this isn't like at least I believe in retrospect, I wasn't trying to like do anything other than like get like positive feedback. So maybe there was like a hole or something that I was trying to fill, but I genuinely was just like, I just want people to be impressed by what I'm doing. And I felt like I was not in a service role, but I had jobs where I was expected to deliver something, and I was constantly like, okay, I'll do the bare minimum, but then I'm like, can I help with that thing or what? Like, that looks interesting. Are you having any problems with that? Can I take that on? And just like trying to excel. And I feel like that's kind of in line.
Now, with every pat on the back, did you feel more empowered each time? Did you feel stronger each time?
100%. Yeah.
Because this is where, you probably heard me say the other day, and it's one of the chapters in my book that's called There's No Business But Show Business. And the parallel I draw is you'll hear performers talk all about, that of all the aspects of show business, what they enjoy the most is doing a play or performing before a live audience, that the adrenaline they get. And this is true. When you are on stage, and things are going well, let's say the joke came off just the right time and everything starts clicking, you feel this energy from the audience that makes you stronger. So what I learned, losing everything at one point and having to go wait tables, is what you're pointing out is that you mentioned a slap on the back. Every time that you connect and realize that you have exceeded the expectations of who you just served a steak to, and you make that connection, and you know that you've exceeded expectations, you know that you did something that you didn't have to do, you walk away from that transaction stronger. You approach the next transaction, just like you approach the next scene on the next play you do, with more aplomb, with greater timing, with greater skill. Each and every transaction makes us stronger if we engage, because it's perfectly possible. We've all gone to the supermarket and had a transaction when nobody looked at us. You could be a part of that transaction as well, but you're cheating yourself first. Because, as I say, great service serves the server first. The person who rises to the occasion to create that service moment wins no matter what happens, whether they make the sale, whether they make the deal, whether the customer is pleasant or not pleasant. You win by showing up. You get stronger by showing up. And this is what I had to tell thousands and thousands and thousands of new hires, 10,000 probably. Their first day at Walt Disney World, bless them, was 8 hours with me. And this was the point I was trying to make to them about self-investment, because I knew that many of them had experienced the parks or the Disney product as kids, either through the movies or they'd been to the parks as an audience. And I knew that I was going to be showing them backstage for the first time. And I knew that quite possibly they were going to see something that would shatter their thought. They were going to see, like I always say, you see Mickey Mouse's head on the floor. And then suddenly you have to invest in a different way to see Mickey through the eyes of that kid again. So I would need to tell these people that you're going to get involved in the parks. You can deal with lots of people, and some of them are going to be just wonderful to you, and some of them are going to be just terrible. Remember that the self-investment is just not about the memory of Walt or the bottom line for the company or even just the guest satisfaction. You are involved in that transaction, and you deserve to win just by investing.
When you're training thousands of people at once, what is the difference, or what separates the person that gets it versus the one that's like, maybe they drift, or obviously I'm sure they work themselves out and they find different jobs, but what do you feel like is the thing that, like, how does someone lock in, buy in, or whatever to be a success in the theory that you're explaining?
We found that it was generational. So we had things in the program, for example, when you walked into the Disney University on your first day. And back then, when I was doing it, you still had to you still had to have your hair cut and shave and your jewelry. You still had to look like you just escaped from the Lawrence Welk show. And we had found that it was generational. So when you walked into the building, we had monitors all over the place playing pieces of film from every decade. We made sure that as you walked down the halls, there were artifacts from films or pieces in the park from every decade. We were very conscious of the fact that we were dealing with people that had experienced the product in different generations. For example, we found that there was a lost generation. There was a generation of kids that grew up in this period when Disney wasn't cool. There was that period right before the animation renaissance. It was about there was a brief generation when it wasn't cool. And we found that training those people was entirely different than training somebody that had watched the Mickey Mouse Club show when they were kids, or people that were showing up and remembering that The Little Mermaid was their first experience with those people were entirely different to inspire. And as I told you, it was people made fun of us and said that the Disney Institute was a brainwashing facility. And I would say they said that because it was a little bit of a brainwashing facility. And it wasn't just training, it was in fact shameless indoctrination. And yes, that we would have to handle differently today.
Yeah, I feel like brainwashing, or the topic of brainwashing, I'm like, isn't that like, it's just a negative description of like building a culture or anything, right? Like, I feel like there's so many parallels. It's kind of like, what's the intent of the person that's doing the educating, or if you want to call it brainwashing, that makes it one or the other, if that makes sense.
To the very core of your question, what I had learned was, especially as we went on, it wasn't going to be enough to ask people to invest because of the memory of Walt Disney. Because some would for a while, or because of what Disney meant to them as kids, or because of even, what it was going to mean to that wasn't going to be enough. They were going to have to find their point of self-investment. The elements were going to break them down. Somebody was going to come at them at some point and verbally rip their face off because Space Mountain wasn't working, even though they had nothing to do with it. So I told them it wasn't going to be enough just to do this for the company or the guest. You were going to have to figure out a way that you were engaged so that you were self-invested. Each magical encounter that you helped to create, you could at least appreciate. You could at least, you know what? It's sort of what I was talking about, and you heard me talk. I was part of the Juan experience. This elaborate thing that we went through. I didn't know much about Harry Potter. I was never going to work for a theme park again. I'd already done the Bank of America thing, and I get this call. You want to, open this Harry Potter world, and it just sounded fascinating to me. So I did, and I didn't know that much about Harry Potter. I had a lot of reading and a lot of movies to watch. And what I came to understand was, okay, I have one here. We would replicate the scene in the movie and guide the guests through this whole thing. And I was fascinated at the emotional investment of the guest at the peak of this presentation, and they would have to do 120 of these a day. You could hear, honestly, many times, Chris, you could hear the parents getting emotional, or the person receiving this would get emotional. And what I would think to myself is, this is a stick. This is a stick. So that emotional thing, and this is how you can see it. And this is what I would say, you're going to see these things, and how you engage with them, how you see them. Is it going to be a stick or a wand? It's going to be both. Your interaction is going to be a choice. Just like I would say at Disney, and I try to rev everybody up. I say, so what is it going to be, gang? Is it going to be magical memories for our guest, or is it going to be just robots and rubber heads? Because it was going to be both. It's both those things. and marrying them in balance and also understanding your place in it and your self-investment took some explaining.
It seems like when you're designing that, the way that you just said that to me, you were like you entered into the design of Diagon Alley with like, I'm going to pour all that I have into this with this team of people, and we're going to create something magical. And it ended up,
Very small piece of a huge,
yes. So, but I'm saying that, but it's just from what you said, it sounds like first of all, you guys had to have the intention, the goal, the North Star of we're going to create something magical. But then it sounds like, and I'm wondering if this is true, that it exceeded all of your expectations. Like you guys were shooting for the stars and you ended up way beyond it. And you're like, we achieved what we set out for and more. And that's a result, I guess, I feel like, of even when we have this grand expectation of what the outcome is going to be, if we fully invest and fully commit, it's going to blow our minds in addition to the person that we've created this thing for.
Let me tell you how invested some of these wizards got. Okay. Some of them decided to just literally grow beards down to their belt. One guy down to his knees. He literally looked, like Merlin. But so there were 13 of these wands. Okay. One of the wands was really ugly, and nobody ever gave out those wands unless for some reason you really offended them or something. But nobody gave out the ugly one. Okay. So there had been a busy season, and I go back to the wizards and I go, okay, okay, we're really running low on the one, so you have to give everyone the ugly one. Well, I saw a wizard literally tear up because it was going to ruin the integrity of. They were that invested that it was going to draw pain to give the guest the ugly one. Instead of what they did do, which is try to match the wand with the personality that they detected from the guest walking in. And using all the skill. That was how they met the moment with integrity, and they took great pride in it. And so asking them to give the ugly wand was truly a compromise. It's an $85 stick, Chris. I know, because I give them away, as you know, every talk. And when I used to work there, I could get them for 50% off. Now I have to pay the $85.
That's awesome. So I mean, that is, it's just impressive when because we've taken our kids to Disney. My daughter I almost brought her down to the PCA so we could go to Harry Potter World, but she's 8 and we were like, we'll wait another year or so. But she's like at that perfect age where I feel like
8 to 12 is the sweet spot for a kid they're old enough not to be too afraid, but they're so young enough to believe in a lot of it. That's a real sweet spot. Yeah.
So in the book that you wrote, Service as a Superpower, what are the 10 skills? Well, you don't have to go through all 10. I'd actually what do you feel like the 2 or 3 that are like the most misunderstood, the most impactful, the hardest to implement, or like however you want to take that? But could you pick a few of those that you feel like are the low-hanging fruit or the thing that you wish people understood, and dive into those?
One of them is to remember that you don't have to like them to delight them. You are going to deal with difficult people that you do not know where they just came from. You don't know where they're going. You don't know why they're being difficult. But them being difficult will identify what they're willing to be. It doesn't identify what you're willing to be. And we also in the service industry have a habit through experience of finding a certain type to villainize. There's a certain type that will get under our skin. And we'll see that, they'll be dressed a certain way. They'll act, they'll walk through the door and we'll go, oh, I know you. Oh, I've dealt with lots of you. But we don't, that we sort of laid our bias on that. So it's important to realize you don't have to like them to delight them, because still what is at stake is the investment you're willing to make and the strength you're willing to take from it. So that's one of them. The other one is never let them see the wires. Never. My story about you go into the park. Imagine you go into the park. You got a little kid and you get there and they drop the rope and you run down there and oh my gosh, there's Snow White. The kid runs up to Snow White and Snow White turns around and she's smoking a cigarette and got a cup of coffee in her hand. In Florida, Snow White is a member of the Teamsters Union and she has a legal right to a cigarette and coffee should she so choose. But she shouldn't bring it on stage. In other words, we never bring backstage on stage. You will have seen what Mickey Mouse's head is like on the floor. They should never see that. Never let them see the wires, because once they see the wires, it's gonna be real hard to not see them. That's what the most important one is. I always say, you know what you have to do if you want to create whatever it is in your organization, a wow moment, a magical moment, a home run, whatever it is. You know what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to do something you don't have to do. You have to do something you don't have to do. It doesn't mean you have to give them something away for free. It doesn't mean you have to, take a loss on something. But think about the great service moments you've had, that were marked with excellence. Somebody probably noticed something, said something, heard something. They met that moment in some way with what we used to call at Disney, the personal touch that made the experience rich. Look for those opportunities to do something that you didn't have to do. And again, it can be the smallest thing.
I love that. So it's just like, I can think about it's so easy. The Disney is like the pinnacle of this. And I feel like there's a book I read called The Power of Moments. I think it's by Chip and Dan Heath. Have you read that book?
No.
Anyway, he talks about a number of these different things. And I'm curious if I'm remembering correctly, I think it's from this book, but he talks about at Disney, they, like a lot of places, will look at like the emotional journey of a customer, family that goes through the park from like when they open at 9 till the end of the night. Like where
we had a whole process map. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he talks about this and says, we can identify like where there's going to be frustration or tension or kids are tired or whatever. And then there's also like these high points. And what he said was,
I just want to say, where the road starts? Do you know where the
I'm guessing you go like when they purchase their ticket, like 3 months before or something.
It's the decision. It's the decision. That's where they say it's the beginning. The from the point of I don't know to I'm going to make that. That's where we always said the journey began there. It began picking up the phone and saying I'm going to book something. That the experience needed to start there.
Yeah, because what he said in the book was most people would do that. You map it out, and then you're like, oh, there's some valleys here. We're going to have to spend energy to make this thing better or like not as painful. And what Disney would do, and again, this is I don't know his involvement or who he talked to figure this out. So you can tell me if this resonates or not. But basically you do want to remove like catastrophic troughs of just like, let's like make sure that their kid doesn't end up with stitches and has to leave, right? Like obviously that would be a big thing to avoid, but just acknowledging there will be some frustration moments. But what Disney does is they invest or triple down on the peaks and the highs to make those even more memorable than the other stuff. So it's like, yes, there's going to be like, we want to have a fun day and there'll be some frustration, but we identify like there's 3 moments that's what they're going to remember for the next 20 years of their life. And how do we make those 10x more memorable? Does that resonate with you, or is that like
It does. It absolutely does. However, pardon me, they are reaching a point, a lot of service organizations there's a little bit of a crisis going on in the parks and service. And it's due to technology. Let me put it to you this way. When phones first started showing up in the parks, we just started to pretend that they weren't there. Just sort of, we just pretended they weren't there. Then the next step was to make them as difficult as possible to use, because we didn't want them using them in the park. We didn't. So it was like it was almost impossible to get good service. We made them as difficult as possible. At least that's what it appeared to me. And then swung all the way to now. It is virtually impossible to go to a Disney theme park and not have your phone in your hand at all times. And at first, the guests thought this was cool. But now, what they are telling the organization over and over and over is that they resent being attached to this technicality, that they can't just go and wander the park anymore. And they've also got wise to the fact that, here, this is to create your magical day. The magical app is to help you create your magical day. Well, what they figured out is, wait. What I'm doing here is I am paying money using this app to help the company service plan. And basically you are paying to help them crowd control. And this has become a wedge between the guest and the guest experience. Has become what was thought to be something that would engage them and make them a part of every moment has now, in fact, drawn them away. Well, what do? They don't know how to get this toothpaste back in the tube. Because now I'm off on a tangent here, but they're so addicted to the extra revenue that this relationship brings, they don't know how to undo it. And let me tell you one last thing. I know the man who invented this process, who created this. We're going to start with a fast pass. We're going to do this whole thing. And he came up with the idea because he used to go to fancy ski resorts. And he knew that when it was time to get your lift, you just got an appointment card and you went and he just didn't understand why we just couldn't do that at the parks. This is the same guy that said to me once, he goes, Walt Disney was very foolish. He said, here were the guest expectations. And Walt, and he had this graph, and he did a presentation for, and Walt would aim here when all he had to do was aim here. And he still would have, and we all thought, oh, no, you're one of those people that is so smart, you're dumb. Oh, no. And this one person had a lot to do with the relationship now that the guests have with the parks and product. Was instrumental in transforming the guest experience into a partnership with technology.
So that I love that this is the world that I live in and I am wrestling with in multiple different ways, because it's like, what do you think? Like, it's so hard when people, I'm assuming these early conversations, that it's like, it's so logical. Of course, the app's going to make it better. Think about how much more convenient and all the information we could distribute instantly, whatever. Like, how do you argue that, right? The person that'd be like, no, and here's why, this is what's going to happen. It's just like, no, it won't. And then now it's like, okay, that we were totally wrong. Yes, there's benefit and profits that can come from it. But yeah, I'm assuming you probably have no idea what they're attempting or trying to figure out to do, but they're aware that they wish there was another way. And like, is there a solution?
There's drawing boards, plans that are technical, and I won't get into it. But yes, they're aware of the problem. They're aware. Like I told you, one of my other things is using listening as a martial art, listening as a superpower. And I always say, I was part of so many great projects. I was so lucky. Opening of the studio park and all kinds of great things I was so lucky to be a part of. And most of them were a success. Some of them were not. And the one thing that the failures always had in common was that we had not listened. We had reached that point, which a lot of great organizations do. When you're so good at your job, you're so good at your task, that you indeed know more about it than your customers, it's very easy to stop giving your customers what they want and instead start giving them what you think they should want. And every time I look at one of Disney's failures or problems, Euro Disneyland, Disney Institute the first time, what just went down with that Star Wars hotel that they lost $500 million on, it always came from the same internal, I'll use the word smugness. Because sometimes, and lots of great organizations do this, and Disney has, where you're applauding for yourself so loud that you can't hear what the guests are trying to tell you. So I always say that that's one thing that every failure at the Walt Disney Company had in common, was they had at some point failed to listen to a clue that was right in front of them, because they had not, and this is very important, to occasionally take great pride in embracing your ignorance. Every organization should do this. Every organization should meet at some point and just talk about what you don't know, or even ponder what it is you don't know. There's great power, even as individuals. How many times have you heard a success story? I'm proof of this as well. Where you'll hear somebody go, I tried, I couldn't do that, and then I tried again, and then I went at it this way, and then I went at it this way, and finally I just threw my hands up, and then everything that's when they say, and it came together. When they finally got to the point where they took all that knowledge and then they just let go and embraced the fact that they were ignorant. They literally did not know what to do next. And at some point, when you make space to learn something new, you can.
So when the teacher appears when the student is ready?
Yeah, that's true.
What happened with, you mentioned the Star Wars hotel. I actually remember getting a invitation to this thing. This was like the 2-day thing. Is this what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
This was a while ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
It closed,
but I didn't.
3 years ago.
Give me the quick rundown on what was it? And
quick rundown. They're going to have a Star Wars hotel where it felt like you were on a spaceship. The rooms are going to feel like you were in a room on a spaceship. How could you lose? How could you lose? I'll tell you how you lost. You decided to not just make it a hotel, to make it an interactive experience that was going to be $6,000 for a weekend for a family of 4. You were not going to give them access to other parts of the park, and you were going to entwine them 24/7 in this experience. You were going to have actors that you had to hire to live on the spaceship. And then, because you really wanted it to be cool, you decided to have 100 rooms. Okay, looking back on it, you would think any idiot would have told you, okay, you build the hotel with the spaceship rooms, 500 rooms. You dedicate 100 of these rooms for people who want to have that experience, right? No. Even though all of their data would have told them who could afford to do this, who wanted to do this, and what would have been the best choice. But they knew better than everybody. They knew everybody. And what they did was build this beautiful, monumental thing that almost no one could afford. And it began hemorrhaging money immediately. And pretty soon, they had what is probably the most costly theme park mistake in history. Was the $500 million I think they threw at this part of the Star Wars expansion.
wow.
There you go.
Did they say now it's just a regular hotel and it looks like Star Wars, or it's like they're demolishing it?
It is now office buildings.
Wow. Which you don't even need because you work from home. So
yeah, I would. Yeah, but no, it's now been turned into it's one more thing about not listening. Okay, all right. They built they're going to build a Star Wars land. How could you lose? Okay, well, this is how. They didn't build it with the classic characters. They didn't build, no, what they did was they built it based on the television show that was current so they could sell toys and merch and products. And they built this thing that is so impressive to look at, but you don't want to hang out there.
Instead of going with Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, go to the classics that generationally like are much more inclusive.
Someone is going to write a book just about this. This is going to be a classic case study in taking an IP that should have been such an easy home run and literally finding incredibly new ways to lose money on it. It's to the point that they're not going to build another one. They were going to build another Star Wars land at the Paris park and decided, no.
So there's lots of, this is like all like, wow, I love everything you're talking about. I'm like, oh, I have dozens of questions. How does all of this, so I'm hearing the main thing is like, there's listening. How do you determine whether, like, I'm hearing what the customer is saying? It's kind of like, I think about Steve Jobs or Henry Ford or whatever with the founder, the visionary that's like, people don't know what they want. How do you balance the two things of like Henry Ford saying, if I would have listened to what people wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse, you know? So it's like,
okay, right there. You hit it. You hit it right there. It's about asking the right questions. Good example. So for a while, okay, this is sort of how Disney approached their questioning, their surveying. You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how magical was your Disney experience? Well, okay, even if they hit a 3, see, everyone thinks it's magical. It's like, they had a way of looking at the numbers. So that's right there is listening enough, embracing ignorance enough to ask the right questions.
so what, like, let's with that one, just because I love examples, instead of saying how magical was your experience, the right question would be,
well, first of all, the first things you should ask about are the emotional impact, and then ask about the value afterwards. Because Disney would get hammered on that, on the value. So this is why they would survey a family right after they got home, like bam, 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 right after they got home, and then they would do it a month later after the credit card bill had got there to study the difference in the emotional impact once the bill had showed up. That was smart. Now that's asking the right question.
interesting. So the emotional impact would be like, it's just like with anything, keep in mind context. Where is this person at? They just got off Space Mountain. They said this is the best place in the world. And it's like, good context. I asked them 2 months later and they were like, yeah, like that, the timing matters. And that needs to be taken into consideration when you're taking any survey or asking any question.
Yes. And to be candid with you, I think they stopped doing so much of those metrics internally and realized that they needed to go to, I think we started using different independent groups to make those measurements.
I think so one of my last few questions here, I think I saw on LinkedIn you had posted something about AI and AI revolution. And is this going to free us or cage us more? What do you feel like how does service evolve or change or become more or less important with everything that's happening with technology right now?
So there's so many ripples, but the one that I would have any knowledge about or, have any right to talk about is that it is going to be amazing how many white collar professionals are going to have the experience that I had when suddenly you're on TV for 12 years and you're thrust into the service industry. And they're going to be faced with, for some of them, they're going to realize that they had been in a gilded cage, and they're going to realize that there is great freedom. For other people, they're going to be quite lost, which is why we need to look and talk about service differently, because pretty soon the person who's, taking your order at Chili's is going to be much more educated than they were in the past. And we're going to need to face this as a culture. We're going to need to look at service differently. We're going to have to look at service the way they do occasionally in Europe, with greater dignity. We're going to have to talk about service in a different way. We're going to have to explain to our new employees, frankly, what is in it for them, which we've always been bad at. In corporate training, what I've learned is we're very good about telling, our employees what's in it for the company, what's in it for the client. We're very clumsy about talking about what's in it for the employee and how to get the most out of that. But it is going to be a strange cultural shift where some people are going to learn that service is a superpower. And some people are there is going to be a fundamental choice. Like I always say to somebody who loses everything and has to reinvent themselves, there is a fundamental choice that we're going to see in this culture. People are either going to get better or bitter. There it is. And to help people make that transition, we're going to need to tell the truth about the power of delivering service, the grace and integrity of delivering service, the pride in delivering great service.
You say grace and integrity?
Yes. And grace and yes, I use those words, the grace and integrity of what it means to bring the best of yourself for the purpose of service. Service is a superpower. Being willing to serve, bringing excellence to that experience, propels us. That's how we move forward. And that's how these people that are going to find themselves, suddenly, formerly paralegals who are going to have to reinvent themselves. The best way to reinvent yourself is to serve somebody other than yourself. Make yourself ready and strong for another opportunity. It's like when I lost everything and had to wait tables. I just stopped worrying about what was going to happen in 12 weeks. And I just started worrying about the table in front of me. And what I always say is excellence seeks and finds other excellence like a heat missile. When you bring excellence to like I said, bringing excellence to being a waiter at that restaurant made me ready for the Walt Disney Company to literally find me. I mean, talk about, a great example of making yourself ready for an opportunity, and the opportunity just literally having to look under rocks to find you. But there's a magic ingredient. And so since we've gone to this emotional place, all right, now hang with me because I'm going to use it. Just hang with me. All right. I'm going to use the word pixie dust. All right. I used it. We would always say because I used to have to train the new executives, we'd put them through we would make them sit right next to the new Alice in Wonderland and the new custodial person, and it would all be part of the same thing. And I'm sorry, I'm going off on a wild tangent.
I'm excited. Let's go.
Okay. There's a magic ingredient. And I'll use this example. So in any production of Peter Pan, that you see at the end, when he's going to get the kids to Neverland, this is the scene. He goes, okay, we're going to fly. Just think magic thoughts, think happy thoughts. And the kids think happy thoughts, and then he'll get liftoff. He goes, no, you got to think happy thoughts, and then he'll get liftoff. And he goes, oh, wow. You're right. There's something I forgot. There's one thing. Throws pixie dust on him. In life, the pixie dust is gratitude. And I'm going to say that with a straight face. The power of gratitude about where you are at this moment and what you're willing to be at this moment builds an emotional strength. Gratitude will give excellence a higher liftoff. And I cannot explain that with a scientific process map. I can only tell you that, I'm in my late 60s. And I've lived a lot of lives. I've been lucky enough to succeed and fail, succeed again, fail, succeed again. Yes, grace, integrity. And what brings you there is gratitude. And the other thing that gratitude will do is bring you into now. That's why I would say that's why we love pets so much. Pets
Well, I'm going to make sure I'm going to try and encapsulate this in my mind so that I'm approaching this the right way. So the pixie dust, which is like in this, the example or the analogy is think happy thoughts, but it's like, oh, you're missing the key ingredient. You're saying in real life, you can be doing all the right things, but if you are not in a state of gratitude, you're going to show up differently. Like if I'm not,
You're still going to get the job done, but you might not fly. It's the gratitude.
and that's because being like, and you're saying it's more of like, it's not being like, oh, thank you so much, Louie, which it is that also, but it's more than that. It's like, are you completely grateful and like soaking in the moment right now? And are you coming from a place of gratitude more than are you saying thank you and being grateful? Is that correct?
This is going to be a very weird analogy, but in the same way, you shouldn't drink alcohol after you've taken a sleeping pill because it makes it stronger. The gratitude makes everything else we did stronger. It makes the effects of what we've done stronger. You can look. There's lots of people that are horrible that succeed. They're excellent. I remember when I was designing the program at Bank of America, one of the executives comes up to me after a few weeks and says, "Oh, it's been very interesting working with you. I just want to say goodbye. I'm going to go to Wells Fargo." And that's what he said. And I go, "Why?" He looks at me and goes, "You know why? I don't want to be nice. I don't want to get emotionally involved." He said, "You know what? I've been doing this a long time. I know how to make my numbers. I know how to succeed. I know how to make money." And there it is. And so he went somewhere else because he he was repelled by the culture. He no longer, yeah.
Wow. That's it's like, I mean, everybody has they got to know yourself.
And to that end, when I'm saying about the executives coming in, we knew that they had been part of the Disney culture when they could use the words pixie dust without gagging or feeling silly. We knew that they had, engaged on a different emotional level.
That's awesome. All right. So, yeah, this has been great. Like, I have my wrap up questions, but last round for you. What else do you feel like is on your mind, on your heart for service in just like showing up? Is there any nuggets of for painting owners that are listening or other business owners? What is like the last couple thoughts you have on your key message?
I would start thinking in a certain way. For example, at the beginning of this, you told me what you did. Tell me again you said, give me again.
I said, we automate painting companies.
That's what you do. Okay. Well, that's your task, Chris. But what do you do? What is it you do?
Yeah. So I would say I take business owners that are trying to scale and grow something special, and I remove all of the mundane, boring tasks that are dehumanizing that no one likes to do anyways, and free them up to do more themselves and their employees to do more creative, life-giving in the business that makes work more fun.
Okay, you're getting closer to it. Finding the emotional component it is of what it is that you're selling. At Disney, we said that our core product was happiness. We were selling happiness. At Universal, the period I was there, they were selling the feeling of adventure. When I was designing programs for Bank of America, they were selling the feeling of security. When I designed programs from ING, they wanted to sell the feeling of prosperity. They'd found what was the emotional root of what it is they were trying to sell. And we need to start thinking about that. We need to start thinking, because not only will it help us to create better moments and products for our clients, but it will also help us realize the emotional impact that we're having, and it will lead to less burnout and better engagement, I think, if we get more in tune with what it is emotionally we're selling.
And
we think about our jobs more as jobs and less as tasks.
I love that.
Okay, quick. So they put me through this terrible training this boot camp training when I was going to design training for Disney, be a trainer. So for several weeks, they had you do the worst tasks at Disney. You followed the horse in the parade. You cleaned toilets in Fantasyland. You played a chipmunk. The roughest gigs. And it shook me up because they wanted you to see these are the people that you're training. So the last day, they said, you're going to learn about the pizza rush. You're going to learn what the pizza rush is like here at the Magic Kingdom. So you're going to go backstage, back behind the Tomorrowland Terrace, and you're going to learn about the pizza rush. So I go back there. There's this little lady who's been there many, many, many years, who for 19 years, she's been running this pizza rush. And so she shows me what my task is going to be. I am going to operate this conveyor belt with my foot. It's going to roll, and it's going to roll out this pizza dough. I'm armed with a paintbrush and this big old bucket of sauce and this cheese on it. And so it's going to roll down. I'm going to paint the sauce on. I'm going to throw the cheese on. And with this belt and this button, I'm going to send it to the left or the right. And this was so much more fun than cleaning toilets. I was like, oh, I can do this. And they're playing, the Disney music back there. It's real clean. And I was so happy to have a task that, was easier. So I start humming along with the music and I'm throwing the cheese on there. And she's watching me. And I'm, oh, yeah. And I think I'm getting good at it. So I start to speed up the belt. No. And I'm just having the best time. Finally, she can't take it anymore. And she comes up to me and she goes, honey. Oh, baby. She goes, honey, you got to get that cheese all the way around that pizza even. Because if you don't, it ain't gonna be good show for my guests. She had never interfaced with a guest. And yet, she was emotionally connected to know that her job or her task was to make pizza. Her job was to be part of a magical memory. That's the consciousness as business leaders and owners and people who are trying to create change in the world of service. This is how we want to think. We've all got to get that cheese all the way around the pizza even, or it's not going to be a good show for our guests, whether we see them or not.
Love that. So I'm wondering if I can, because I'm talking to the expert in this. So I want to ask me a couple questions to help me get 10 steps closer to the right direction of what you're saying, like the emotion is that we do. So we've just been going through this, so it's fresh in my mind. I help painting company owners become purposeful painters, building intentional, durable ownership with decision grade reporting and AI assisted forecasting, and managers who run the day to day. So that's like the elevator pitch of like, that's what we do. But you're bringing up a really good point of like, what is the emotion? And I feel like my best guess, if I were to say, is we're selling the opposite of overwhelmed. I don't know what that would be.
What you're selling the bridge. You're selling a bridge to that gap from the way we used to do business and create things to a new way. And you're creating a safe and reliable passageway to marry those worlds and to move forward. Even that's too much, but do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's like because what people come to me all the time because they're like, AI is moving so fast. I know I need to do something. There's new apps every day. I don't know. I already have 10 apps. None of them talk to each other. Help me. Like that's like the emotional side that they're coming to us with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say, I think what I'm like selling is like confidence or stability or like peace of mind. Yeah.
Or you're going to, this is the way to go at it. We would do this in an office, they're going to feel safer. They're going to, all the emotions they're going to feel for making this transition with you. But I'm thinking, I need you to make me feel secure about all these changes I'm going to make, the way I'm going to have to make them. Am I really doing the right thing? Am I over-investing? I need you. Am I in over my head as far as how I'm going to interact, how my employees are going to interact with this technology? So what I would count on you to do would be to create a bubble of security. So I would worry less, panic less, and have a sense that I was going to be guided through this very complicated process in a secure. That's the word I would.
I love that. So, and that now bringing it full circle, that core thing is how, like, from a service perspective, every interaction that a client or a prospective client or anyone has with Boolean our solutions engineers and our project managers, am I correct in like that's where you have to be coming from is this interaction making the person feel more secure or less secure? And just like make it a black and white. Like what could you do right here as the person?
Okay, I just came out. Well, anyway, because I've worked with a lot of clients. I think the word you want is trust. That's the word you want. Trust. That's the word you've got to have in your mission statement. You've got to have the word, or maybe even trust and security, but trust. I think what you're telling me is a key component of what you're selling, and what you're providing is trust.
But so if it's trust, that my question is that how you approach like at Disney or anywhere else, Bank of America, with Harry Potter, do you have an underlying emotion that you're constantly filtering to say, is this moving the needle? And is it appropriate to tie that to like every interaction? Or are there certain times where it's like, no, in general, we think about it, but on the individual decisions, is it not helpful to bring it back to that prosperity or those words?
It does, but what you're going to need to do that, and now we're going to into my consultant language here. For example, at Disney, we had a matrix of we had a prioritized matrix of discussion. For example, in other words, that matrix was safety, courtesy, show, and efficiency. So let's say I'm from legal and you're working park operations, but we need to talk about this guest experience. Even though we're coming from very different worlds, we knew that the way we were going to discuss this is the first angle we were going to come at to create this magical memory, this magical moment, this happiness that we were selling. We would use these guidelines of discussion, of language, safety. And I always say the pirate ride. So let's say you go to the pirate ride and you go there, man, and oh my God, it's beautiful. And there's no line and everybody's so nice. But you go down the waterfall on the boat and it capsizes. 3 people drown. There's no service, free plus 4.
And nothing else matters.
Yeah, we don't win.
It's over.
Okay. It's that, and at that base level. Let's say you go there, you come out alive, everything's really, really great, and the robots are great, and you don't have to wait any time at all, but somebody cusses at you or some racial epithet at you on the way out. Okay, we lose, and we lose in that order. Let's say that you go, everybody's nice, you come out alive, there's no wait, but we forget to turn the robots on. We lose in that order of forgiveness. But let's say that you go, and you come out alive, everything's great, everybody's nice, but you've got to wait an hour and 15 minutes. You won't like it, but you'll forgive it if the other 3 components in that matrix appeared. So that's why we had a language for problem solving. That's one of the things that I work with companies. I always say, what's your safety, courtesy, show, and efficiency? That's the first thing I nail down with them is what is going to be the prioritized way we're going to talk about challenges and problems so that we're.
And you tell that to customers? Or customers are supposed to
my clients when we're designing training or anything.
Yeah, the client, like the business has to know, the employees have to know. But my immediate thought is like, I kind of would want to tell, like if someone asked me, and obviously Disney doesn't say this, but they've kind of made it, you can feel it, that like those are things, if someone were to ask you, like, how do you think we prioritize things here at Disney? But is it appropriate to say, hey, client, we want you, this is what we believe. We believe that you need this, and then this, and then this, and then this. We're going to do our best at all these things, and this is how we prioritize, just so that when you're like, hey, it took you 6 hours to respond,
right.
We're like,
okay, that's what I was going to say. Remember, when you let them know this, when you let them read the script before they get there, they're going to expect certain scenes.
And you would say, don't do that.
In other words, no, I'm not. I'm just saying.
Or just know the trade-off.
In other words, what you're doing is you're giving them the record, you're giving them the album, the CD of all the songs to a musical they're going to see. So those songs better be good.
Yeah.
If you're gonna give them a preview and promise, you've got to make good on those promises. So
love it. All right. Well, this has been fantastic. Let's go to my wrap up. So 3 book recommendations.
Well, I wouldn't mind if you bought mine. That's really cheesy, but I'm just going to say that real quick. Services of Superpower, Lessons Learned in a Magic Kingdom, available on Amazon. Also, this happens to be here that I've been reading. Another angle on this this book that called Unreasonable Hospitality. And I think it's very good. It comes
Have
at
you
this another
connected with
angle.
Will, or it seems like you guys are in different
I
industries?
know we're kind of doing the same thing. I read this book and went, I mean, it's like,
But you don't
yes,
know, you've never
I
met
don't
him,
know
you
him.
don't know him.
But he's basically saying the same thing, which is the power of doing more than you have to. That's the thrust of it. And yet, this is going to be off the wall. There is an author I've rediscovered. He was one of the great wits of the 50s and 60s. His name was Patrick Dennis, which is a pseudonym. And he wrote Anti-Mame. He wrote a lot of very sort of erudite for the time. Very, 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 very witty. And he's been almost forgotten. I've rediscovered his books and they're really good. I would say, look at any of the books by Patrick Dennis that you can get a hold of and just enjoy the dry humor of his writing and a point of view from a different age. So I guess that's where those would be my reading thoughts at this point.
Perfect. And movie or show suggestion?
I think, you know what? I would recommend a movie that was really significant when I was a young man. It's the movie Cabaret. And the movie Cabaret is about a nation that is in a backlash period and how its citizens are choosing to adapt to that backlash period and how quickly a culture can make choices and changes. And I never thought that it would be so relevant to a modern time. That's a movie I would recommend, is Cabaret. And then, you know what? It's called Cabaret. It was up for the Best Picture in 1972. And
I love finding out I just looked this up on IMDb. I always ask for recommendations literally for this purpose because it's a 7.8 out of 10 on IMDb. And I love my friend and I back in college, we came up with this system. If it's above a 7.3 or better, you can watch that movie and you will enjoy it. Like it might not be your favorite, but it is going to be worth your time. If it's under a 7.3, then the person recommending it has to decide, are you going to use your one mulligan and make a recommendation on this like sub 7.3? Because like I've never heard of this and it's like a 7.8 out of 10.
You've never heard of Cabaret?
No. But it's a 7.8, so it's like this is going to be on the list now. Like if next time I have an evening with nothing going on, my wife and I are going to watch this.
Quick, here's two more. We just lost two of the greatest comedic actresses of all time. Catherine O'Hara and Diane Keaton. Catherine O'Hara, watch Waiting for Guffman. Or any of the movies that she's in, but Waiting for Guffman with Catherine O'Hara, which is a mockumentary, is one of the funniest things that you will ever see and just a real treasure. And with Diane Keaton, I'd go all the way back to the 70s and her first big hit, Play It Again, Sam. She's so beautiful. She's so sexy. She's so funny. She's just at the pinnacle of her just being fabulous. And it's one of Woody Allen's first movies. And when he was still in his sort of comedy period, and it's just those two women in those two roles.
And every single one of these, 7.4, 7.6, 7.8. You nailed this is like just the fun thing at the end of the episode. That's like, you crushed it. You came up with 3 excellent recommendations. All right. And final question. If someone wants to get in touch with you or hire you to speak or consult with you, what's your preferred method of contact? What's the best way for them to get connected?
I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. That's right. LinkedIn is a really easy way to find me.
Louie Gravance. And how do you?
I'm all over the internet. My agents or Executive Speakers Bureau, they handle me exclusively. And just a side note, I'm on this comedic travel channel now on YouTube that I never thought I'd be doing. It's silly and fun.
What do you call it? Impromptu or spacing on the word?
Yes, it's a travel vlog where yes. It's called John and Louie's Big Adventures. I don't know. People think it's kind of funny and we're ridiculous and I don't know. So it's something I didn't think I'd find myself in. And I'm still traveling all over the country, Middle East, everywhere, still doing these talks. I'll do that for as long as I can.
Awesome. Well, Louie, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and coming on. And Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. This was very pleasant, Chris.
Thank you so much for listening. My name is Chris Kiefer, and my mission is to champion the relentless pursuit of purpose. And what that means to me is to be an example, a champion, someone that is in the trenches, working and showing and winning and trying and failing in how to pursue a deeper and more meaningful life with the people that I love, with my kids, with my friends, with our family, and also just be a champion and example of entrepreneurship and following my passion and doing what I believe I'm called to on this earth. And so if that inspires you in some way, please share this episode. If you want, like, subscribe, share, whatever, do all the stuff. It means the world to me to get this message and get these guests that I have out there. And if you're interested in any of the book recommendations or looking up other episodes, the movie list, you can visit my website, chriskiefer.com, for all the details on the show, and also check out the Boolean review software, as well as the Boolean automation consulting company that I own for home service businesses. So thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.